Fikile Umbalula is a man on a mission to transform sport in South Africa. The country's sports minister raised more than a few eyebrows recently when he threatened all of the country's sporting codes, telling them have a 60% quota of black players in your teams or face sanctions and boycott. Although that threat has since been watered down, Umbalula argues that other than the odd token player, cricket and rugby especially have failed to transform over the last 20 years of democracy.
The question of the targets, you can't have transformation without targets. So when we say 40-60, is to measure our capacity and of each federation whether or not these things can actually be achieved. But it's not to say total annihilation of one group by the other. Is to raise the standards to the point where it is with a view of ensuring that we are able to ensure that everybody sit up and take notice.
To implement such a plan immediately would have a huge impact on the country's teams. Many of the rugby franchises would struggle to field a side. In short, leaving the various codes to their own devices to bring about greater representation has just not worked.
It hasn't happened. Some have actually taken it upon themselves to try something, but it has not produced the results. The transformation agenda is one aspect that has actually been abandoned, partly, in these 20 years of democracy. So we know sports and the role that it plays, the path, of unity that we have traversed in the past 20 years. We now need to consolidate policy to implementation.
This talk of quotas has not been well received by AfriForum, a mainly Afrikaner civil rights organisation. They feel such a system is racist.
You should choose your teams on merit, but you must make sure that all athletes have an opportunity to start at the same starting line. But what unfortunately happens now with this racial ideology, the minister wants to see everybody at the finishing line at the same time, and that's totally not in line with what sport is about.
But there is a negative aspect to quotas and targets. When quotas were introduced for rugby and cricket during the 1990s and early 2000s, then any player of colour coming in was considered tokenism, that they're only in the side because they were a quota player, and that had a negative impact on their careers.
Many players have actually felt inferior, that is true, because they were called quota players. I mean, that is why some of the players came out and said that we're not quota players. We can perform. Even those who can perform were not selected because deliberately it was said that they are quota players. And I think there's no quota player. There are players who are capable. In terms of the system, we want to ensure that they are given a fair chance.
What is clear, race and sport in South Africa remains a fiercely contentious issue. Some have questioned the timing of the discussion, so close to a general election. But others feel action is long overdue and that much more needs to be done to bring greater representation to the country's national teams. Dan Williams, CCTV, Johannesburg.